Julie Gary is a former Air Defense Artillery officer with the U.S. Army, professor at WashU. She's Bureau Chief of Behavioral Health at the City of St. Louis Department of Health. Oh, and she's also a soccer mom of daughter Jordan, who's a St. Louis University soccer Billiken. Julie sat down with us to talk about parenting the journey from youth to collegiate play and the immense pressure on athletes today. She also shared how her family supports one another emotionally and gave us information on an important mental health resource. Have a listen. What? Good morning. I never know. And I don't think I ever want to know what you're going to play. There was a time when I thought, I should tell them like what would be cool. Because I think once or twice I did that. But this is way more fun.
No, I typically...
What is this?
Oh, come on.
No, I know what it is, but what drove you to pick this song?
Thursday Fun Day in honor of Daytime Beers.
Oh.
A little old-time rock and roll.
Are you referring to the fact that I'm on my number 3?
Maybe. I don't know.
It's fine.
I feed off my environment, and that feeds my Spotify choices.
Well, after city press conference today, I had a little time to kill between, we got done actually on time. And then I was like, I'll go to this. I tried to go to Urban Chestnut and they were closed. I was standing there I was like, they're not open. Went to this field house place that I haven't been to. And I was like, this is fun.
But you ended up drinking Urban Chestnuts there.
Oh, yeah. The Swickle. And so I had the one and I was just down enough where I was like, that's not enough for the time I have.
Yeah.
But then you order one more and you're like, actually, that's too much for the time I have. But you can't waste it.
No.
And so I didn't. So here we are.
Yeah, so
this is going to be a great podcast or horrible?
No, so you do press conference with the new look City SC and due to all that German influence, is that why you were chasing down a German craft beer?
Actually, it's pretty much. It's funny that we actually had Henry Kessler today, so it was Coach and Henry Kessler, who is pretty funny. I'm like, I can't wait to do a one-on-one interview with him. He's pretty funny. So
he's got the best. The intro video clip, GIF, whatever, whenever we first signed him, where he, the play is, he's running over towards the touchline, the guy's chasing him,
and then he kicks the ball out at the stands.
But he takes it a step further because he then grabs the ball, the extra ball from the ball boy, and just heaves that one.
I forgot about that.
So that they can't play.
Yeah, we haven't seen him get that spicy yet.
But when I saw that video, I'm like, that's my guy.
Yeah, for a center back, that's your guy.
Totally.
I did ask him today. I said I don't often ask questions because I don't ask questions to just hear me talk. So I only ask questions if I really have a question. And I did, and I said, hi, I haven't met him yet. I haven't seen him at practice yet, one-on-one. And I said, Jen, and so I know that man-to-man marking is pretty much out of vogue on set plays, on corner kicks. But if one Tim Parker wandered into the city box, might one Henry Kessler post up? And he didn't say no. No. Even though it's really zone?
Nah, these guys, they know. I mean, true competitors, especially at the pro level, they're fully aware of kind of the fan expectation and the reality of who you were traded for and
100%.
all of that nuance. So anytime they get the chance to prove that the trade was a better deal for the home team, they're going after it.
Yeah. So he was fun. He did talk about the fact that he hadn't tried St. Louis City pizza yet, and he was looking forward to that. But given that he had come in, I did ask him. I'm like, I don't remember what New York pizza is. Is it thick? It's thin. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't remember that. I know Chicago's deep dish, right?
Yeah, New York style pizza in general is like, if you're having good New York style, it's like Domino's only like quality.
And then everybody said do emos, and then some people were like, don't do that. I don't know. You gotta like Provel, I guess.
Well, you do. And here's the other thing: if you true St. Louis style pizza, like for those of us that going way further back, I prefer like a place like oh my gosh, what's the one that's up off of in Maryland Heights? I'm drawing a blank. The old family style places that serve it rectangular. When you get more of the bar / pub style St. Louis style pizza. Those are the ones. Look, Emo's is the one that made it popular,
right?
But I would put Emo's like 8th, 9th, or 10th.
Then he made it very clear that he's not doing that in season.
No.
Unless he's got plenty of days between.
I think we do better. St. Louis does better from a pizza standpoint. It's some of the unique, maybe boutique style pizza. For example, Blackthorn over in South City.
Okay, haven't had it. Heard I should.
Oh my God, it's phenomenal.
Okay, I don't get out much. You know this. So
yeah, you should.
So we should record occasionally. Take a break from your new digs, which are awesome.
Yeah.
And record in places that I need to. I did go to Amsterdam on my own and saw your.
Really?
I did. Well, not on my
Mecca?
own. I met Daniel Esteve and George and I went, and I don't remember what game it was for, but Keller was working because George hollered at him, and I was like, "Oh, he doesn't remember who you are. He thinks you're a stalker."
So the summertime, so Euros or
Yeah, it was
Copa.
Euro stuff. It was fun. So I have made my visit there. I don't get out. I've got 4 kids, man. I don't get out much except to.
That's even
I don't
more
know,
reason to
soccer
go,
practice.
like-
Soccer practice.
Well, they're
and then
old
I'm
enough.
tired.
Like, just lock the door. You got Ring cameras. Get out of the house. What? I mean,
I'm gonna go to your chalet in Innsbruck. That's where I'm going.
the
I'm renting
music
it.
box.
Music box. sorry.
Airbnb.
Airbnb.
Check it out. You
I'm
need a
doing it.
little stay-K, vacay.
I'm doing it. And last but not least, because we got to get to our guests, but you go stirring some shit with the Landon Donovan post. What are you doing?
I don't know.
And so many
it's,
comments.
Maybe it's the election season or something. Like you cannot go on social media and just not get riled up a little bit. So instead of like leaning into my old favorite, I'm a poli-sci econ grad. Like I love politics and engage. I love debate, right?
You're a nerd.
But
It's
I'm
good.
trying to
Proud
stay.
nerd.
I'm trying to stay away. So what's my next best option? I'll debate soccer nerds.
But I mean, that does not hit home for everybody because
Yeah.
it is not. Again, we don't have time for this, but running a small club in Oakville called Oakville United, it wasn't cheap. I mean, it wasn't free. We were definitely lower priced than the big clubs, but we had to rent fields. You still have to get uniforms. The whole thing costs money, and we didn't make money, by the way. We did it for free.
Kind of look. At the end of the day, like I don't care what anybody thinks about should it be free, should it be pay to play, and everything in between. At the end of the day, refs are not free. Fields are not free.
Right.
Power, lights, that's not free.
And apparently, got on our uniforms every year.
And and then you have the purists that are like, well, the big clubs should be paying for it for everybody. Oh, okay. Well, the reason why these people are so rich is because they don't like losing money. Like that's how capitalism works.
right.
So I'm just so burnt out on the argument. And you know what I'm starting to lean into, and we can talk about it with guests today too, the multi-sport athlete argument.
I know.
I have always been, you know what, I get it. Maybe a little balance, maybe a little camaraderie, maybe a little different culture. You know what, toss that all out the window. I don't care anymore. If we are going to go down the path of saying we need to develop the best soccer players in the world, men's, women's, etc., well, guess what? You can't do both. You especially can't do 3.
Do you think you can do multi till a certain age?
You know what? I'm going to lean all the way in. I'm going to say no, and here's why.
Oh,
Did Messi ever play basketball when he was a kid in Argentina? Did Thierry Henry play football when he was growing up in Paris, in the burbs?
fair point.
I mean, you can name any name you want from a global perspective of an athlete that is top of the game, specifically within soccer, and go right down their biography and their history.
But then you go to Taylor Twellman, who was multi-sport, didn't engage until a little bit later than our average 3-year-old.
Great for America. All these guys, great for America. Women, great for America. But on the men's side in particular, Taylor Twellman was never a top 1,000 player in the world.
Neither was Landon.
That's the point.
Fair point.
Right now you could argue that only Christian Pulisic is maybe sniffing the top 500.
Fair.
That's one. We are a nation of 330 million people. We have one player in the top 500.
And then you're going to
Toss the other sports
all
out.
those studies, right, that say the most resilient athletes are multi-sport athletes.
Well, but those studies are based on a hyper focus on the reality of U.S. sports, where you can have, specifically football and basketball. When you look at the top athletes in NCAA,
I would argue
and pro,
baseball too. To an extent.
Hockey. Most hockey players play soccer. You do not see anywhere in the world the 1% soccer players having any background in mass with other sports. It just doesn't exist.
Good point.
All right. Great
We-
show.
okay.
We'll catch you next time.
We actually do have a guest. and
she's sitting here saying, yeah,
Julie
yeah.
Gary is like, can I talk on my
It's all
microphone
good.
now? It's so funny because JB screwed over my guests list recently because he
I
just can't
didn't.
keep his
I
shit
didn't.
together
Renters
on scheduling. And I was like, but Julie, you had been on my radar for so I have a written
Okay.
list actually, and your name is on there. Sorry, it feels a little stalkery.
It's all good.
But we connected, I'm pretty sure, because, Facebook that my kids make fun of, but sometimes does make good suggestions. And I think we connected through JB. And I was like, who is this interesting lady? Oh, she's got a girl who plays at SLU. And, I think we're the same people. So thanks for joining us today.
No problem.
And, and just truly don't know you one-on-one, but you guys are for the other side of the river. So there's that.
We are the ill side.
The right side.
That's right.
Dale Shilley would agree with you. He calls it always God's
I
country.
love some Dale Shilley.
God's country.
He coached Jordan at age 10.
Again, so Coach JB
Mm-hmm.
coached your daughter.
Yeah.
I never got coached by Dale. That's bullshit.
I was his team manager
That
too.
was not good. Oh, really?
He's such a good yeah, he's
Tens
such a
of
good guy.
thousands of kids.
I know.
And his daughter Megan might have gone to homecoming with my son Elijah at one point.
It's a thing. Soccer, big but small. Big but small.
Always is.
Always is. So I was so glad for you to join because, and in asking you to join, we get some information because I was like, I don't know that much about her, and you shared a bunch of stuff that you didn't play soccer. It was
No.
so bring us back to that. So I'm a linear person. Let's start from the beginning. So you're a soccer mom now, but you didn't start that way.
No. So when I was in high school, I played 4 sports, so I am a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah, don't
fan.
poop on that, JB.
I look. Let me qualify my statement. For the top level, be it national teams, obviously, professional in particular, and power, D1, high level college. For those players that want to touch those levels, when you look backwards at, what did they do as youth athletes? Again, I'm going to compare and contrast this with the Netherlands and Germany and England and France. There is no competition with other sports. Here there is. Now, for the other 97, 98% of athletes that are not going to be playing in the ACC or are not going to be drafted in the MLS or go to Europe on tryouts and ever sniff a national team, play as many sports as you want. But let's not kid ourselves that for these elite, hyper-focusing at a younger age clearly works everywhere else in the world, and we are one of the few countries that is not kind of mandating that more, good, bad, or indifferent.
Julie has a PhD, so we'll let her say.
Yeah, no. So,
No, I think there are some advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, if you can focus on one sport and not burn out,
And hopefully you love it, right?
yeah, and you have to love it. But also it depends on how you train, because we all know from a physiological standpoint too that certain sports, certain uses, certain training styles lend you to overuse injuries. So when a kid does focus on one sport over and over and maybe practices 6 or 7 days a week, the chances of that happening are higher.
well, I think there's a big issue of culture that's that's baked into that exact scenario as well. For example, my own personal experience, it was sophomore, junior year of high school. It was an ODP team. We went to
Was it Dale's team?
no, well, so we were, loosely affiliated with that. It was Tim Carter out of ISU and a few others. And we went to the Holland Cup. And I remember that when we went over there, we were all club kids. We were all Grant City, Collinsville, Edwardsville kids.
Right.
We go to Europe, and now we have these Dutch trainers for 2 weeks that are working with us. And the first thing that I noticed was very, very light warm-up pregame. You play the game, but then we spent 20 to 30 minutes stretching and warm down. We never, ever did that.
Yeah, we never did that.
And it was this approach, and it was like, look, you're fit, so let's just get you warmed up, get the muscles loose, and then you're going to play your game and you're going to work hard. But when you really need to recover is after the game. So it's just such a minor switch. Where nowadays, you see a bunch of, dad and mom coaches on the side. Everybody get in a circle and touch your toes, and it's all this stuff before the game because they saw it on YouTube.
The first cool down I ever did was at Lindenwood my freshman year. We were done. We got done playing in high school or club, whenever you went home, you sat in the car. And it was the first practice, and I started to walk away, and they were like, "Hey, freshman." And I was like, "Hey." They're like, "We're doing a cool down." Now, granted, the cool down wasn't as cool as it is today. It was literally just laying on the ground. You shake each other's legs kind of down. You stretch a little bit more. And I was like, I don't understand what's happening. They're like, "This is a cool down. You have to take care of your muscles." And I was like, I can take care of them by going to bed. And they're like, "Don't do that. Don't go straight to bed if you don't cool down."
Right. No, and I think if more kids, got that training of sleep, how they eat, how they recover, those are some of the most important things that kids can learn about being an athlete.
And I just want to say the things about you that you probably won't say about yourself, but only from your Facebook profile. So Bureau Chief, Behavioral Health at City of St. Louis Department of Health, Professor at WashU, former Air Defense Artillery Officer. Man, we get like Navy people on.
It's a big resume.
Yeah, it's awesome. Epidemiology at St. Louis University, pre-medicine biology at University of Notre Dame. I mean, if I'm thinking of your kids have like, your parent is like a wealth of knowledge, but I'm also thinking because your mom, they probably don't care.
Yeah.
Maybe to an extent, you're just mom.
Yeah, no, but I'm also like I'm very different as a mom than I am like in my professional life.
In the workplace?
And I'm very different as a coach than I am in my daily professional life. So I tend to be, people see that list and they're like,
yeah,
really?
It's like,
no
why
way.
does she want to come on this podcast?
I'm just like a normal, I tell people all the time, I'm just a normal girl. I'm from like a town like I live in now. I live in Collinsville, Illinois, and I'm from a town that's like very similar to that. It's, everybody takes care of everybody. Neighbors take care of neighbors. Moms take care of all the kids.
Comparable, when you think about St. Louis, you think about South County versus North County, right? Is Collinsville and then JB, your Granite City, were there like ever little rivalries?
There was blood drawn.
Yes,
there was
big rival towns.
Yeah,
Really?
I mean, I think the I don't know his exact rank, and I will not name names, but he's a officer of the law up the bluff, was locked up in our town for being stupid at a soccer game.
Oh goodness!
Yeah, no, it's not friendly.
Are you gonna let him get away with it?
But to a degree, it's not like that anymore.
No, I feel like those two towns stick together a lot when it comes to now. I'm not from Collinsville originally, but I've lived there for 22 years. I went to high school in Pontiac, Illinois, but obviously I've been in the soccer world in Collinsville for 22 years. So I know all the stories.
There.
Yeah,
Tournaments
I mean,
there, Granite City, there's tournaments. That's why I know it, because soccer tournament.
Collinsville's athletic director, I believe, and their soccer coach are Granite City guys. Like, true. And I called them and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
Legit.
Okay, let's go back to your four sports.
Anyway.
So soccer was one, maybe?
Nope.
Yeah. No. What?
No.
So you wound up in soccer, but you didn't play that.
No. So soccer came to my high school the year after I graduated. So, and it's actually it's not a sport there right now. So it's kind of interesting that.
What?
Yeah. So I played basketball, volleyball, softball, and track.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So like the big ones that
Yeah.
you think of.
Yeah.
But so wait, soccer's not there now?
No, it's not.
What does that mean? I don't
I know.
understand.
It's weird. No, I'm about to go back to my high school in about a month. So I'm in the Athletic Hall of Fame there, but I'm going to be in the a distinguished alumni. So I'm like riding in the homecoming parade and everything.
Oh, hell yeah.
But so I love that. It's still kind of this town that loves sports and remembers.
But you're gonna be
its
like,
alumni,
get
but
a soccer
get a soccer team. Yes.
What are you doing? Do they have boys too, or just not girls? What is it?
They don't have either.
What?
They don't.
So Granite City's going to start bragging.
You do have a Wally's.
We do have a Wally's. We do. We had the first Wally's in the Midwest. We had the one before Fenton. Yeah. Yeah. So everyone's like,
that was my town.
yeah. So people will be like, oh, you're from Pontiac, the place that has Wally's. And I'm like, yeah.
I didn't know. That's
Just
so
saying.
cool. We haven't even talked about soccer yet, but so much has been revealed.
Yes. Yes. Don't live up the bluff and go eat at Wally's in Pontiac.
And get a soccer team, Collinsville. What are you doing?
Collinsville has soccer teams. They actually have really, pretty good soccer programs historically, which is actually why Jordan went to high school there. She could have come across the river to go to private schools, and actually my husband was like a big private school fan, but I was a public school kid, so
I got to go back to so when you say that my high school didn't have soccer, what goes to my mind is either early 1970s or pre-Title IX for the most, maybe a little bit mid-1970s because it wasn't really mandated for like 7 or 8 years, Title IX. But you told me 1991.
I graduated in 1990, yeah.
And you didn't have a soccer team?
Nope. We didn't have a soccer team.
Do you see?
But we were
but
like,
you got to understand the area too.
it's central Illinois.
Yeah. It's
I don't understand. So help me. I don't get it.
So it's north of Peoria, Champaign area, but it's well south of southern suburbs.
It's like
of Chicago.
50 miles from Joliet.
Everything's got a sport. Is it football then?
Oh yeah. So we were amazing and are still amazing in football and basketball and volleyball for girls. So volleyball would have been but in the spring we had softball. We were good at softball too. So
interesting. Yeah. So I go on to say you're all state in volleyball and basketball. That makes sense. And do you coach basketball?
I did coach basketball. I coached Jordan until her sophomore year in high school.
Okay. So how the hell did soccer start then? I got to know what reeled you into the soccer world.
I'm a hardcore smash mouth, work hard kind of person. And so all of my kids did soccer at age 3. My oldest laid on the field and asked when the concession stand was going to open. So that
Mine did Thor moves.
Me.
He acted like Thor in the Hulk. It was awesome.
Killed me. I was like, there's no way this is my kid. So he is not a sports kid. He's a band and art kid. And then my middle kid, Elijah, he did soccer too in Collinsville Area Soccer Association. But he ended up being a basketball player and a runner. So he was he went to state in the 2 mile and was on Father McGivney's cross country team that went to state as well. And then Jordan, she tried it and she loved it from the beginning.
How old do you remember?
3. She was 3.
Oh, so she was just a little bebop.
But yeah, 3 with still had a tooth missing in the front. And looked like this little ferocious lion and loved it from the beginning and stood out from the beginning. So for her, that was her thing. And I'm like I mentioned, a work hard, love sports where you're the kids who hustle, so soccer for me, I was like, why didn't we have this?
Right.
And so I was all behind her from the beginning. Was really a ton of my best friends are my soccer mom friends from, Collinsville Granite, from Gallagher. We had a 3v3 team too called BOSS, BOSS, Band of Soccer Sisters. So those are my daughter's closest soccer friends. And they started that when they were 6 or 7, and they just stopped playing last year. So they played together for a long time as well.
And she's just a freshman at SLU right now, right?
She's a sophomore.
Or no, sophomore.
Yeah, she's a sophomore.
I saw your move-in pictures and I couldn't remember what age, but on the younger side of SLU's team.
Yeah.
And Katie Shields fan.
I'm a huge Katie Shields fan.
It says a lot about Katie Shields and what she builds at SLU, and I'm not getting paid for this endorsement, but when my daughter, who's just turned 16, she's driving, it's awesome. I will say I'm not at all
It is
worried.
amazing.
She's wonderful. It's
amazing.
Great. I feel like one more kid driving. This is great. Anyway, I digress. But Marin,
it's a DD.
I know. Yeah, for sure. There's times she's like, Mom, you can have fun. But where
I love you.
I love you. And she, like today. So she is that kid right now that sees the juniors she's sophomore, so juniors of her grade committing and all this. So we're learning a lot. It's a really big gift, but where she's like, everything on her list is as far away from St. Louis as possible.
Jordan was the same way.
But after Katie Shields ran a practice for them, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, SLU went on your list. And she's like, yeah, I really like her. And we went to the SLU BYU game. And normally Marin's like, let's go. But she was like, let's go down. And I know she didn't want to see any particular player. It was Katie she wanted to see.
I love it.
Who, of course, came over to her. And it was great. That much speak to not only just the soccer portion, but character, program, vibe.
Yes, the culture for Jordan and for parents there is absolutely amazing. What I like about Katie Shields is Harvard grad. Harvard grad.
She's smart, man.
And she ties that, those types. She wants intelligent kids who are good girls, and that's evident in like the girls who stay, the older girls who are kind of building it for the younger girls. Her emphasis on the classroom, which is important, and then her emphasis on just being a strong, mentally tough woman. That's important for me to have Jordan have someone who's setting an example for her like that. Besides me,
Yeah.
I want her to see someone who cares about her, but that also sets.
It's also nice to have a little backup. Like, it's not just me saying it, man.
Right. Luckily, I don't have to do that a lot with her, but there are other of her teammates that definitely need those words.
So talk a little bit about the introduction process and the experience whenever Jordan was, moving through probably her junior year in particular, going into senior year. She knows that at some point she wants to play at the next level. You guys probably start to put together a plan. What does it even look like? Are you working with the club? And what was the introduction to Katie and the program? Specifically, what was the recruiting process for you and Jordan?
Yeah, so I still have the list in my phone. Jordan had 13 schools that she was looking at, and she originally was like, I'm not going to SLU.
She wants to go away.
Yeah, she wanted...
We're in particular, like Marin is, I want to see an ocean and be near a coast.
She didn't necessarily have that.
Okay.
It was just more, I want to be away from St. Louis. I want to grow. I want to, and it wasn't necessarily about being away from her family. She just wanted to like develop away from.
Be independent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she went on, so we started like day one, recruiting period opened. Her first appointment of the day on that day was SLU. So they had her as their first interview of the day on opening of the recruiting period. She called, so I was at work. She was doing these virtual calls on that day, and she called me crying. She said she had just gotten off of her call with SLU, and she was just ecstatic. She got her first full ride offer in that meeting.
My God.
But she also said, I don't want to go to SLU. And so we went through kind of this, but so they kind of talked and they gave her a time frame, and then she went and explored, and that was kind of a whirlwind tour of, I think it was like 10 weeks where we went to a ton of other schools, and then she came back after that, and I was totally like, this is your decision. This is not my decision. Obviously, it would be nice to have school paid for, but this is your decision. And so she came back at the end of all those visits and said, I want to go to SLU. And I, the whole time, was like hoping she was going to say she was going to SLU. I never said that. And it wasn't because it was close to home or anything. I just felt something different about Katie and Chris at the time.
Because you had also met them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had met them a few different times. We had gone to games, obviously, since it was here. And then I went to Notre Dame. So if Notre Dame would come to town, which they did come to town a couple times during her high school period, we went to those games for sure. But we tried to get to 2 or 3 games a year where you could really see. And then, just following her on social media, following the program. We knew a couple of other Illinois girls who went there as well. So just following their experience. But I saw Katie, as someone that she could look up to. And then just seeing the other coaches and the other interviews we went through, which some of them parents were on and some not. That was my hope, was that it had nothing to do with geography. It had nothing to do with the academic side, although obviously I love SLU as well. I went to grad school there. But it was more like education of the whole person, coming from a soccer viewpoint and from a school viewpoint. And then Jordan also, faith is big for her. She's my kid who, my kids went to Lutheran school, but she's the one who's kind of stayed in it, faith, prayer. Those are big components of her life. And so I was happy that she chose a school where she could still get that element as well. So That was important.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking of just recently, because it's so recent, the last game, and that I saw, which was BIU. They played since then, of course, and lost, I think, by 1 to Penn State.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
Talking about man-to-man,
That
Penn
is-
State number 14.
You
were
know,
talking about
that's not
marking up man-to-man
shabby,
earlier. I
right?
was like,
is that one?
come on.
Because there was one for BYU, too. I can't remember her name at the point in time, but there was one that was like, oh, if there was a man-to-man marking anymore, that would be that one.
Right. No, yeah. So we're looking good so far. Obviously ranked in the top 25, which is where we want to be going into conference play. We have Creighton tomorrow.
We're recording on a Thursday, and they are traveling to Creighton.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then on this coming Sunday is the Bronze Boot at City Park against SIUE. So that's always a fun day. That was a great day last year.
So her being a sophomore, then she was there last year.
She was
for it, and she's not here with us today, of course, but you could maybe share. Big deal playing at a pro stadium?
Oh, it was amazing. Just the whole experience leading up to it. When it was first announced, she wasn't at school yet. So I think it was announced like a month before she reported. So it gets announced.
That had to be a bonus.
And everyone was like, oh my gosh, you get to play at City Stadium. And then just the whole environment that day, the crowd. It's rock star experience. So super exciting for the SLU girls to get to play at City Park.
And I keep I'm a broken record right now, but I keep pressing that. I know it's been the men's competition for a long time for a reason, because we needed Title IX and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, you need to have bling too. Like, we don't want that bling. That bronze boot's pretty old and kind of gross. Brian McBride himself said, do not drink from that. It's disgusting. But I'm like, but it's funny because the girls' programs, both SIUE and SLU, said we want something, but we don't want to just mimic what the men are doing. We want to do our own thing. So they're trying to currently, I guess, come up with some bling to win. You can win some bling.
And the public health person in me would say, don't drink out of the boot. But the Julie Gary, personal would drink whiskey out of the boot. Let's go.
See, 22 years in Collinsville, and it's all over.
Whiskey cleans everything, right? But what you make sure I'll get through today is I'm hopping around a little bit because I want to be sure I don't miss anything. But one thing you and I had kind of messaged back and forth was the mental health and the pressure on athletes today. Because I feel like back in my day, late 80s, early 90s.
I feel like we might be
that
close.
there was some, I was an overscheduled athlete before it was such a thing, but it's so much more now. Add in social media. There's no documentation of my stupidity. It's your word against mine, right?
Trust
you don't
me.
know.
There are some stories.
Exactly. But now we've got all this at a moment's notice. There's comparison.
Yeah.
And so I want to be sure that we give you time to talk about that, because you have that. She's only a sophomore. She's still relatively young, Jordan.
Yeah. So for me, this is what I do for a living. So I'm the Behavioral Health Bureau Chief for the city of St. Louis. And, this is what I see on a daily basis from a substance use perspective, from an overdose perspective, from kids trying things for the first time, from the pressures that kids have in comparing themselves to others, but also just the pressure that some parents put on their kids. And so I'm kind of... If I have two things I correct my kids on when they're playing sports. It's body language and effort. If those two things are okay, if I feel like...
And they're 100% controllable, right?
Yes. Anything else, any outcome or anything like that, I generally don't comment. But obviously, we're on the sidelines with a ton of different types of parents who have different expectations for their kids and start putting pressure on kids. I mean, you see people post their kids playing soccer. I saw a 1-year-old practice video for soccer yesterday on Instagram where someone had different targets inside one of the collapsible goals that they had their kids shooting in. And part of me was like, oh, that's super cute. But 95% of me was like, oh, that's too much at 1-year-old. So, I feel like, well, first of all, I just want to say, there are resources available. So if there are, a kid who's struggling and can't talk to their parents and don't have somebody in their school that they can talk to, don't have a coach or a culture where they feel like they can step forward, they can always call 988 or text 988, or even if they're on their laptop, they can chat with 988.
I have never heard of this.
Yeah.
You're saying it right now.
So this is the suicide lifeline or crisis lifeline for. It's by state, but Missouri. This is what Missouri uses. This is what we use here in St. Louis.
But that's a big word, though, right? When you say suicide, I feel like we should say it, but I feel like if you can also maybe call it if you're not suicidal,
you're struggling.
But you're struggling.
Yeah, and so that's the word struggle. So my kids and I have a group text that we use to talk to each other. I'm a widow. I'm not sure if you guys know that part of my story, but that's also something that happened for Jordan. In 2020, we suddenly lost my husband. So my kids have gone through kind of, from a mental health perspective, some challenges. And that's one of the reasons when I was asked to do the job that I do now, I said yes, because I saw how challenging it is to navigate services in St. Louis. And so, and I talk to a lot of high school kids, I go out and talk to high school teams and PE classes and stuff about mental health. And I talk to them about, kind of where they see it in music, where they see it on social media, who they can talk to. And if they don't have someone they can talk to, and gosh darn it, I hope everyone does, but we all know, like, not every parent is approachable about mental health. And so my kids and we have a group text, and all somebody has to do is drop in there, hey, I'm struggling today. It might be me one day. It might be, my oldest one day. It might be Jordan one day. And we're just all there to support in any way we can, even if it's just saying, hey, do you need to talk? Or do you want me to stop by, or, whatever. So I want kids to know that if they feel like they don't have someone to talk to in their life related to the pressure they're feeling as an athlete or as a student, or, getting into college or going to trade school,
friends,
or whatever.
Social.
Friends, boys and girls and dumb relationships, kind of all
You're
of
right.
those things.
Girls are dumb.
Hey,
Boys
listen,
are dumb.
You are outnumbered. I might be outnumbered on the geography side, but you are
Yes,
outnumbered
but
on
I'm
the gender
brave.
side. You are brave and stupid.
Yeah, so they can call 988, or so the Behavioral Health Bureau, we have a line too that they can call. It's 314-657-1585. And so they can reach out to us too, and we can connect them with anonymous resources in the community. If they're we can get them access for free. If they don't want to say like, hey, my parents, I don't want to turn this in on my parents' insurance. We have all kinds of resources.
Oh, wow.
We can
I didn't even
connect them
think
to.
about that.
So, so here's a resource. I want kids to know that it's okay to not be okay. We all have those days, and sometimes as a teenager, you feel like something's off, but you're not really sure like what it is. You're like, hey, I'm struggling today, but I really don't have a good reason why. It's just life.
Dude, my 8-year-old not long ago, it was maybe in the last month, came to me. I think it was because it was probably before school, right? And she's going to be 3rd grade. She's very stressed out about that. Yeah. She's a feeler. She's in all her feels, Harper. And she came to me and came to me, and we snuggled. Part of this is also her delaying bedtime. So let's be clear. She's a professional bedtime delayer. And she came to me and she said, the wisest word, she said, I'm upset and I'm nervous and I don't know why. I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And I said, it's called anxiety, babe.
Yeah.
It's called anxiety. And there doesn't always have to be a reason you look for it. That's about as qualified as I am. So it's cool to know that there's a resource when she gets a little bit older that I can say is trustworthy. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, God, please, I hope you can talk to somebody.
Absolutely. And, I think it's good for kids to know sometimes, like, hey, it's anonymous. Like, no one's going to know you ever talked to this person. But if you do need to be connected to resources too for longer term counseling or something like that, we can do that as well. So,
But let's lean into a little bit of the stress component of this. Specifically, obviously this is a soccer pod. Let's talk about your viewpoint or opinions as it pertains to the stress that these kids as players are going through, and specifically, because you weren't born with the game. You grew into the game at a later date, right?
Right.
So your perception of sidelines and parent involvement, is kind of segmented. Speak to the role that parents play in this competitive environment, whether it's on the sideline or what they're doing when they get in the car, because those conversations probably generate more of the stress points than anything these kids are going through on the field.
Absolutely. And, haven't always been the perfect sports parent. Like, I coach myself. And so there have been times when we got in the car and I did have a conversation that was not comfortable for my kid.
Guilty.
Yes. And eventually you get to this healthy point where you're having an open conversation with your kid about how that makes them feel. But most kids aren't going to say that. So the bottom line is, I'm going to say, let coaches coach, let players play. That's a hard thing to do as a parent sometimes. But those conversations as you get in the car after a performance, whether you watched practice, which is another thing I disagree with as well, like go do your own thing, exercise, do something.
Walk, go work on your computer, closer to the UFU's concession stand because the Wi-Fi there sucks. But yes, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think, I mentioned before the 1-year-old video that I saw on social media, but I think, these conversations start so young. And so a kid is never going to be able to measure up to any of our perfection expectations. We're parents. We are supposed to be accepting and loving of our kids no matter what, and we're supposed to be guiding them in the right direction. And when we're constantly beating them up for what they are or are not doing on a sports field, that just is defeating to their mentality, their spirit. And we should be the ones like encouraging them and giving them the resources that we know are available to kind of. The most important thing is that they become a good person, a kind person, and not that they become some all-star player.
Do you think, though, that the role of the investment, the expense of the clubs, the process, the time, the gas, the hotels, all of that, do you think parents are, just kind of getting baked into this mindset where they are expecting an ROI, therefore the stress between them and their kid from a performance standpoint, and then their child and college, that pathway? Do you think we're just kind of building an environment in which stress is baked in?
I think it's baked in, but I think it's unrealistic. So I think that parents often aren't. So our kids get to a certain age, and we can kind of see, in a lot of cases, kind of what the potential is. I mean, some kids develop later, obviously, but I think just because you're paying for something and you expect a product, like these organizations are huge organizations that are money-making organizations, and so they're literally taking kids of all talents, and your kid might not make the top team or, whatever the stress.
But they can make the 18th team.
Right. And they can still have fun playing the game.
Right. And I'm not super sad about that because I like that they can do something, don't hate me, beyond CYC. I do like that there's something beyond VETA here in St. Louis and CYC, which anybody outside, it's indoor, and our Catholic Youth Council soccer. I like that they can get the ability to be coached potentially at a good level if they and still be a part of the game. But then there is when you pay money, you expect 100%.
Yeah.
Psychologically.
Yes.
You pay money on what's happening.
Yeah, but that expectation is not always realistic, and it's not fair to our kids, right? Our kids are still even in their 20s, still developing from a psychological standpoint, and that extra pressure we place on them can lead to a breaking point. And
when they can choose. Yes. Eventually, they'll choose no.
So that was going to be my next point is it always has to be their choice. And if they're not happy doing it, what is the point of having them do it? It has to be their choice, no matter what sport they play. I mentioned my oldest, who's not a sports kid. And so, early on, for him, it was obvious he was into art. And so you just have to figure out, like, for your kid, what is best. And do everything you can to support the development of that, but not have unrealistic expectations around how it plays out.
And there's always, I think, with social media, I know better, and I fall victim to it myself at times, where it's that FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And, you know,
Is that what that means?
That's what I was told. If it's not, then I feel really, really super smart knowing that. Along with sus and some other things that you're supposed to. My kids
quit
are like,
hanging
stop
out with
saying
your
that.
kids.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, you need to go out more.
And something about capping. I don't know. But there is this thing about. My youngest is 8, right? And so she's, we're not going pro anytime soon. It's fine. She's a good little player. She's on a great little team. When we look at the team, you're like, whoa, but they're 8. And I would say that there are times when I wonder, like, she runs around the neighborhood like she could hang with a 1970s kid. Like, there's very few. Harper's pretty feral. She could hang with 1970s. She just runs around. She doesn't brush her hair. She's great. I love her for everything. I know. I love her already. Yeah. Right. But there are times when then I see on Instagram or Facebook other members of her team that are like running. What do you call those treadmills that you power yourself?
No way.
What are those? They're kind of arced in a way, and you run and you self-propel them, and they make you faster. Alex
they do make you faster?
Pfeiffer does them, apparently.
Okay.
Alex Pfeiffer does them. So she's a pro. But they're 8 and they're doing that. And I look at them and I swear I fight with my own psychology because I'm like, I think I need to sign Harper up for that. And then I'm like, oh, just let her play outside with her friends and then just go play soccer. And it's fine if she's not, like, she's still, I would say, on the top half of her team. But do you see the cognitive dissonance that's happening right now? Do you hear it?
I do. And I think, the Venn diagram of all these conversations, the multi-sport conversation we had earlier, and now we're getting into this modern day PT training.
I know, and now you got me thinking I shouldn't sign her up for winter basketball. Thanks a lot, JB.
No, but I think everything is like, look, again, we're not honestly evaluating our expectations. In a fair way, right?
I don't know.
And I think that the one thing, what I see more than anything, and I have 3 boys that have played the game, their whole lives and still are, to extreme varying degrees. And what I've seen at every single one of those levels, from MLS Next all the way down to just championship fund CYC, is parent evaluation or perception of their kids and where their kid really falls within whatever the group is. It's just not realistic. And I think it's projection, and it's fine. We all love our kids and we all think they're the best and, all of those things, but we don't have a mechanism, or there is no focus on, hey, and I blame the clubs for this. There are very few clubs and coaches in particular that are willing to have the hard conversations with parents and say, look, Dale Schilly, he's one of the best. The Sam Fink episode over on Soccer Dad Pod, when we have him on, if you're listening, go find that one, because he talks about a story where Dale flat out told him, you're not good enough for this team. Sam, being mentally motivated like few others, was like, fine, what do I need to do? And he gets an email from Dale saying, you're shit in these areas and blah, 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 blah. What's he do? He prints it out, puts it on his mirror, and is like, these are things I'm going to work on, right? He took responsibility. They both did, in being honest about how good the kid is and what the kid needed to do. There's no tool in the toolbox at Fuse or Gallagher or whatever to address that
they just get moved.
Evaluation.
So I have 2 stories, and because I don't want to take too much time away from Julie, but 2.
Yeah.
One is Ben Lunt, the backup goalkeeper for Roman Berkey at City, right? So
how tall is he? Like 7'3"?
6, at least 6'4", and Henry Kessler is just about as tall. So
he's
at least
like
6'6". I think he's 6'6".
Yeah.
And so thankfully he sat down to do our interview. I was like, oh, my arm's going to hurt when I talk to you. But he was
holding
so,
on to this?
Yeah, really. He was so interesting in talking about how in Germany, at least at his club that he was at, that from an early age, like 12, they are told, you're not good enough, in the nicest of ways, but you're not good enough. And so you can find another club. It's par for the course there. It is what they are used to going through. And he's like, and then he was like, we could expand upon the pay to play. And I'm like, we can't, because I only have 5 minutes with you. You have to talk about other stuff. So that's one story that sticks out. And then now I was talking and I forgot about the other one.
Well, let me ask you, because one thing that I've been thinking about that could be a really simple solution to all of this would be kid driven. Once you get to a certain age, say I have a 2013, he's U12. I think his age group could easily, if you ask them at the end of the week, where they can go into a little simple app, hey, rate your teammates.
I love that.
Oh, I love that.
And that's the Katie Shields way.
Because kids
That's
know.
the Katie Shields way.
All of these kids, I don't care what the team is, I don't care what level, you ask any group of kids that are fairly respectable to the sport and like it, love it, and are challenged at it, if you ask them to rank their own team, I bet out of 15 kids, you're going to have 13 of them will agree on who the best player is at a minimum. You know, and true all the way down. So if kids can figure it out, you know, start there. Because that's an easy way too. Look, kids need to advocate. Okay, if you think you're better, let's do it. And that gives the coach something to talk about.
Yeah, and I think another thing I think is Gallagher, I think they do an annual evaluation. They do two, but
Yeah,
I feel like it
IDPs
should
or
be
whatever.
Yeah, I feel like it should be more frequent. And I feel like bringing parents into at least one of those conversations is important. And I know some of the coaches do it really well and other ones don't, but I feel like it needs to be a standard kind of way.
Well, and I think part of it too is, and as human beings, we all struggle with this. It is hard to have the uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah.
It is so much more likely for many of us, men and women, to sugarcoat it, right? It's hard to say, not good enough right now.
Yeah.
Not good enough. Like your kid, but not good enough right now.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, I don't know your guys' employment history, but I feel like it only prepares them for real life because
All day
I have one-on-ones with my employees on a weekly basis and they literally know what they're doing well in this week and what they're not doing well. And I even give them a chance to give me feedback. Like, what did I do well leading you this week? And what was I completely shitty at?
And so you make it super normal to have these conversations.
Yeah. And some of them now will like literally walk into my office and close the door and be like, what's wrong with you today? Like and I love
'Cause they
that.
know you.
Yeah. I love that, we've opened those channels. Some of them, it's taken them longer to get comfortable with it. But Katie, she did this last year. She did, what is it? What was the movie? The Men in the Boat.
The rowing one.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
So in the boat, there are 4 spots. And so she had everyone on SLU's team in the spring, and it came into preseason as well. You had to rate who you would have in the one spot, weathering the storm.
So you're saying she went to Harvard.
Yeah, she did go to Harvard. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Right.
So they went and watched The Boys in the Boat. The Boys in the Boat, not the
Boys
Men
in the Boat. Got it.
Yeah, and then she had them rate their teammates on who would you want in spot 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 meaning the person doesn't do shit.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So and that's like so, and they do meetings every other week. So they're literally getting feedback. They're watching film. They're getting feedback on these are the things you're doing from a soccer standpoint. These are the things your classmates are saying or your peers are saying about you from a fitting in and personality standpoint.
Yeah.
And these are the other kind of team values and where you stand in terms of those. And I mean, as a freshman for Jordan, some of those conversations are hard because you're like, okay, I'm doing really well in this area, but I'm really sucking in this area. And so some kids respond to that well if they've come from an environment where
and then you have the mathematical or the mental equation of jumping from what was okay. You were great in high school and you were okay at maybe 1 or 2 things. Well, when you make the jump to a program like Katie's, okay is bad at that level. So adjusting to the reality of your new landscape is tough for these kids.
Yeah. And I mean, and another thing that I love about Katie and her coaching staff is, and Chris was great at this, who now coaches at Marquette, but just being candid and saying like, you fit in here or you don't. And so kids know early on, within first semester, like whether they're going to have a future with the program or not.
And not only that, they process that and they realize the world doesn't end if you don't. Right?
Yes.
If you get something bad, the world's not over.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And then you, kid, can make an informed decision. Do I want to stay and stick this out? Do I want to work on this? Or is this not a good fit for me?
Yeah. And it's been pretty cool to kind of see like the kids who do make the decision to leave, like, and where they land and how well they're doing, even from a mental health standpoint. And then number two, the kids who stay and who make the right decisions for themselves and who keep working, and to see like how their playing time evolves, because they stay in it, they stay committed, they keep working, they take it on from a mental health perspective. And let's talk a little bit more about the mental health perspective in terms of just the rigor, right? The pressure that's on kids like coming into these programs is great, but when you get into it and you understand the time commitment, and we talked about rest and kind of all of those things, but I think a bigger part of that recovery period is like the mental health piece, like learning to check in with yourself every day, learning to kind of understand where I am, knowing I have to go to class. I go from class, I have to eat right. I have to then go to practice, go to film, then go to lift, then fit some recovery in there, fit some study time in there. Try to, fit in with my teammates. I think there's just so much that like they have to fit into a 24-hour period, that understanding like I not only have to recover my body, but I have to recover my mind too, because I'm on all day. And so understanding like, okay, whatever works for me, whatever coping mechanism it is, it could be I pick up a musical instrument and play. It could be I listen to music. It could be I get outside and do something besides exercising, just sit outside in a beautiful campus space. Whatever it is, I FaceTime my boyfriend, like whatever it is, fitting those 30 minutes to an hour in every day is so important from a mental health perspective. And I think now, freshman year, Jordan and her teammates weren't always good at it. I think now, going into sophomore year, they knew like, okay, this is what worked for me last year. This is what didn't. This is what put me in a bad space. They've also gotten better at like talking to each other about when somebody is in a poor mental health space, like what do I do about it? Like how much can I talk to them? And then when do I need to like take that extra step and tell a coach or tell a counselor or something like that? So I think that's also part of it is mental health is talked about so much today at the high school level, at the junior high level. We're even teaching classes in the St. Louis Public School elementary schools. And so kids are talking about it. So they need to understand also, like, they can't be afraid to like take a step and support their teammate or their classmate. So, saying like, hey, I'm worried about you. I'm going to connect you to a resource, whether it be a school nurse or something like that. So I think that's another area that Jordan and her teammates have grown in. Which
it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It's like, it's like, I try to liken it because Harper, who's in my youngest, who's in public school, they have a monthly kind of counselor come in and talk about it. It's like, if you had an injured ankle, like Liam, my 13-year-old came home and he's like, my ankle's really hurting me. So it's, I don't know, probably need new shoes. Who knows? You could be growing. And it's like, okay, what do? We ice the foot. We take an ibuprofen. We make sure, why don't you not keep wearing your stupid Crocs and why don't you put your actual tennis shoes on?
Were they in sport mode?
With white socks.
Exactly.
Like,
totally.
A bunch of nerds.
And so we talk about it. We don't think anything's wrong with Liam because he's got a hurt ankle. We think of, oh, okay, your ankle's hurting. You play a lot of soccer. And so the mental part of it still has a little bit of stigma behind it where it's like, oh, okay, you're not feeling on. Wouldn't it be cool if that was just part of, how do I get myself back to, how do I get my ankle to feel better? How do I get my brain, my mind, my emotions to feel better?
Yeah. And I work with some groups like Story Stitchers is a good example of kind of a group of young kids. And we talk about like, what are some tools they can use that kind of fit in with the life they've kind of grown up with. And so there are a ton of apps that you can use that are free, that will remind you a couple times a day to check in. And it's literally just clicking on boxes that name feelings that is in their language. So when you first log into it, you put your age in. And so it kind of shifts the language to age appropriate feeling language. And so they can then click on, how they're feeling. And then it takes you to the next page that says like, okay, what parts of your life are attributing to these feelings? So then you kind of click on that. And then the next page when you first log in, you click
I'm
on
looking
things.
this up right now. Story Stitcher.
Story Stitchers is the group, but I
Okay.
can show you some after.
Okay, cool.
So then when you first log in, you type things or click on things that work for you in terms of coping. So whether it's music or whatever works for you. So then it'll make a suggestion. It even has some breathing exercises it'll take you through. And it's literally like 3 minutes of your time. But it allows you to check in. It reminds you to check in a couple times a day. So then you slow down for a second and you say like, okay, how am I really feeling today? So I think those types of things are things that I would encourage kids to use. Just to quickly check in with themselves. First thing in the morning is a great time to do it because it's before you get out there. And then I have mine. It goes off at noon, just because it's in the middle of typically a stressful work day. And so then I check in at that time too. But you can do whatever works for you.
That's so interesting. So, Jordan, who's playing, even your other kids, are there things from your profession that you find them using, and or maybe using things that maybe Katie has put as part of her team to manage mental health, along with, of course, sports health and academic health, and I feel like in a way, what the kids go through nowadays isn't so much different from what we did. I certainly felt stressed as a student. I was a double major and playing, but it's exacerbated by things we also didn't have, such as social media and things like that. Do you find that Jordan maybe brings some of the things that from your expertise into the team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure that she like takes it to the whole team, but definitely like some of her teammates and close friends, like she would call me about last year and say like, hey, so-and-so's going through this, like what could I suggest to her? Or she would speak up about certain things to her coaches relative to her teammates that she was worried about. So I think because I do what I do, my kids like are definitely more sensitive to it and are willing to speak up. And I also think my kids have like dropped their social media usage. Like Jordan will share a lot of SLU stuff, but she doesn't like craft her own posts rarely. If she does, she'll be like, Mom, I'm about to post so that I can hop on and get her first like. But otherwise, like they don't, none of them, the three of them, I probably post.
You're using it for like just the soccer.
Yeah.
For the
So
most
Jordan,
part?
like she'll post, stuff on her story about, she has a boyfriend, his name's Jack, who also goes to SLU, but none of the three of my kids like post a lot on social media. They just don't feel that pressure to
I mean,
post.
Is that different?
rare.
That seems different.
Yeah, I don't know what it is for them.
Well, I think there's a good amount of kids that are like, they don't know what to post. Like there are kids that are like creative and would like to, but they don't take the photos, or they don't know how to edit it, or they don't know what the copy is. And it's just the actual creative process stumbles them. And then you have kids that derive all of their being from the engagement, and I think those are two very different things.
I
and
didn't
what
even
you're
think
describing,
about that. To look at it like, to assess, I'm thinking through right now my kids the two that have social media, and I'm thinking of each of them and how they do it, and trying to think of how they engage.
I think my kids do Snapchat.
I hate that thing.
But
they never let me pick it up because like,
get
Mom,
off
you
my
just,
lawn.
they're like, you just, Jesus, you just shared. They just know that you looked at a photo. I'm like, why is this a problem? They're like, stop touching my phone. Like my phone, I pay for it. But
Right,
go ahead.
exactly.
But
I say that too. I'm like,
anywho.
you will answer your phone because I pay for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So I don't like so my oldest is super creative. He's more like on TikTok
Oh God, I'm not there either.
and Snapchat.
Not there either.
Jordan is on Instagram, and she shares a lot of like soccer stuff, like SLU stuff.
That makes
like,
sense to
and,
me.
And
It's almost a
supports her
professional
teammates.
usage for it.
Yeah, and she's supportive of her teammates, like from Gallagher, who are at different schools and things like
Okay.
that. But she doesn't post a lot of like personal stuff. Like it'll be random like birthdays and stuff like that. I think I post and tag my kids in more things than they post. So, and I've been slacking on that lately. So I'm a little busy. But
So
yeah.
as I always do, because I see JB's fingers moving, which means probably close in.
No, we're all good.
Is you've been through it. Like you're still going through it, but you've been through it. Your youngest is
19.
Jordan.
Jordan's my youngest. So,
Yeah, so
27, 23, and 19.
So definitely further ahead than me. I'm just getting started with some of it. Like there are kids, parents out there that are soccer people going through it, and people who aren't, that actually I sometimes think that they're probably better off not being soccer people. Like they've got a little more hands-off maybe perspective. But advice, best practices for having a kid who, I've got a 18-year-old who stopped playing. It's fine. He's an artsy, creative kind of guy. I've got a 16-year-old who's on a GA winning team and isn't yet eligible for offers. And I'm like, oh God, okay, that starts in June. That freaks me out. A 13-year-old who's like, MLS, I'm going to Europe. He's got big dreams. And then an 8-year-old who's like, I really like it, but that's a lot of running. But she's on a really good team. There's a lot of emotions, I think, even as a former player, that I tend to go through. And I'm like, am I doing it right? How do you do it right?
Yeah, I think doing it right is relative. So doing it right is different for each kid. So number one, you have to know each one of your kids, what they want to do, what their potential is. You have to give them space to breathe. You also can't be afraid to share, to a degree, stories about yourself struggling. Because when we share stories about ourselves struggling, they're more likely to talk to us when they struggle. I think let the coaches coach and let the players play. So go watch your kid, have fun. The more you can sit away from parents who make it negative, the better.
Go have really hard. They work really hard for their kid. They're like motivating their kid, and they're telling them to move and where to go.
They're telling them everything that coach is telling them not to do. Yeah, so go relax. Make it it should be like I get pure joy out of watching my kid play. And that's whether she's on the sideline or she's in the game, because she's happy.
Okay, what do you do though when she messes up? Because that's when I see a lot of parents struggle. I personally inside, I'm like, oh my God.
I mean, I mentioned before, the two things that I will say something about, and I will literally say, body language, I will say those two words, and she knows, that means she needs to make it positive. Yeah. Or I say second and third effort. And so that means like, hey, I'm not working hard enough. And I rarely have to say that. In college, I say nothing.
Right.
Like we're all like mumbling to each other or whatever, but we say nothing. We just literally watch our kids play. So, I have also, I think, like just processes I've gone through in my life, like I respect the process. And I think parents have to also respect the process, right? Each coach has a process. Each program has a process. And I respect Katie's process. I like trust Katie Shields with my daughter, Yeah. And so that means I have nothing to talk to her about besides like, her life. When I see Katie, I ask her about her life and her kids. And so I think respecting the process is important. Like if we don't always know the process as parents. And so, but the coach has communicated that to our kid. And so we have to eventually be hands off and let our kid navigate the process, because that's the only way they're going to be functioning adults who know how to handle their emotions and know how to work hard and know how to handle adversity. And life is full of adversity. We all know that. And from a mental health perspective, like there are times when we're knocked down and we, have a hard time getting back up. But going through adversity as a kid can make us much more adept at that, whether we need support in doing it or not. So I think those are some kind of key things I would tell parents.
That's good.
Have fun. Soak it all in.
Because sometimes I think we often say a lot, right? Like, oh, it ends and it's over. And there are definitely times as a soccer parent, I'm like, I wouldn't be crying if it ended right now. Because I picked up, I think I texted you last night. I'm like, I got to pick up somebody at 9:00 and the other one's coming home at 9:45. Thank God she can drive now. But I'm still tracking her on the road, right?
Yeah.
But if we're not, you're right. If you're not enjoying it as a parent, probably going to lean towards them also not
Yes,
enjoying it. They're not going to
absolutely.
have a good time if you're not having a good time also. Whether they're kicking the ball and it goes at shanks, who cares? You know,
Right.
like it's important. We're all competitive, but if we're not having a good time as parents, they're definitely not going to have a good time
Well,
as players.
they just absorb their environment, you know.
And then they got to sit in the car with you.
I know. Well, I don't talk to my kids, you know. So.
I've gotten better. Like,
Yeah, that's
I've
healthy
gotten,
too.
I've gotten better. I definitely, my 16-year-old, I've had talks and she's like, there were times when we lost and I was like, I wish I wasn't in your car. I'm like, yeah, I did that wrong. I did that wrong.
I love that she told you that.
Yeah.
Like a lot of kids won't.
She's
Right.
like, you weren't fun.
So that's another thing. If kids are listening to this, like if your parent is having a conversation with you that's making you feel negative about the sport you love, like don't be afraid to say that.
Yeah. And like what you need, right? So like some kids they want to talk it out. And other kids are like, let's just listen to music. And other kids are like, if you're Liam, let's eat.
Yeah, right. Where are we going to
Yeah.
eat?
See, I'm hungry.
You know when they know it was a bad game because they're going to be like, "What's for dinner?"
Exactly.
You know, they don't talk about
This
the game.
was an awesome. I mean, we could do so. There should be a part 2. We say this often, but there should
P2.
be a part 2 of all this. And I'm going to tag Katie Shields like crazy in this because she needs to listen to this.
Oh, yeah.
She's doing something right.
Yeah, she is. Oh, yeah.
And so are
She's
you,
amazing.
And so are you.
Roll
Yeah.
Billikens.
Yeah, well, congratulations to you on your productivity output. Your kids are thriving, so
Thank you.
that says a lot about the parents as well. And sorry, obviously, for your loss and what
Thank
they've
you.
been through, but even more to the point, you know, paying attention to those things, it matters.
Yeah.
So kudos to you.
Thank you so much.
Soccer Mom Sunday. Like, review, follow, share, subscribe, something. I don't know.
It only took 10, 15 times to get that
I
right.
got
Well
it.
done.
I just say all the words.
We appreciate it. Thank you for listening. We're on our way out. And as Jen said, like, review, follow, share. It's all free. We've got low self-esteem.
Free's-
So help us out.
Free's awesome.
We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.